All right, welcome listeners to Through the Sight Glass, the podcast that dives deep into the fascinating world of craft beer and celebrates the incredible individuals who shape its vibrant landscape. Join us on a journey where we explore the nuances of this amazing industry and the remarkable people who contribute to its richness and diversity. Today, we've got the wonderful duo of Obelisk Beer Company. Dave Coyne, one of two, earned his Bachelor of Fine Arts degrees from Cal State Long Beach, transitioning from graphic design and illustration to showcasing his creativity and innovation with barrels and beer. He eventually carved out a niche for himself in Astoria. Today, he continues to shine in Astoria, Oregon, as one half of the fantastic duo at Obelisk Beer Company. Then the other half of the amazing duo at Obelisk Beer, Nathan Lampson, graduated with a degree in biology from South Dakota State University. After a short stint as a high school teacher, Nathan took an unexpected turn, immersing himself in the dynamic world of the beer industry. His journey led him to the new horizons, proving that the path from biology to brewing can be just as fascinating as it is unexpected. Thank you guys for joining Obelisk Beer Co. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so just like we start off every other podcast, just kind of talk about like where you guys grew up, your hometown, what you would call your hometown, kind of how that was.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, Nathan Lampson. So I grew up in South Dakota, pretty small share of craft beer going on there, especially while growing up. Both my parents were teachers, sort of transitioned into a marketing position at an education tech startup, and then started working from the Fort George Brewery tap room in Astoria remotely, and kind of like became enthralled with the sort of culture there and just how collegial everyone was, and kind of like the renaissance of the third wave of craft beer explosion, and sort of just jumped in with both feet. And it was sort of a one-way path. Like I remember the transition from teaching to beer, I was worried like once I make that transition, it could be really difficult to turn around and 180 back into teaching. Like I don't know how that looks on resumes. So
Gotcha.
But I've really enjoyed it, and it's been a pleasure to work with Dave and open up our new project. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so my name is Dave Coyne. I was born in Andover, Massachusetts. So the East Coast has a soft spot in my heart, but the bulk of my life in Southern California. So I grew up in South Pasadena. Went to school in Long Beach at Cal State Long Beach. Thought I was going to go into illustration as a career. Turns out it's really hard to make money with freelance illustration, and I wanted to get a job, like a day job that I actually cared about, and not just working at Starbucks or any other chain store or something. So, and at that point, I had been homebrewing for about 3.5 years with my dad. I have vague memories of him homebrewing when we were living in Massachusetts.
How was that beer? How'd that turn out?
Well, he did not continue to homebrew.
Okay.
Yeah, when that was, I don't know, 92. The homebrew supplies were not readily available.
Yeah.
And so I think he just got some like pretty crummy like pre-hopped liquid extract and tried it out and tasted bad, and he was like, well, screw this, I'm not going to keep making beer at home.
Yeah.
And then once homebrewing was a lot more popular, good homebrew stores nearby, and once I showed an interest, he was like, all right, well, maybe we'll try it out again. So yeah, we were homebrewing and had a pretty decent homebrew system, and started looking for work in the Northwest. My sister had moved up to Oregon, and I'd visited a handful of times and wanted to move up here. And it kind of reminds me of Massachusetts without the humidity.
Which is nice.
Yes.
I'm not built for humidity. Yeah. Big fan.
Started looking for work, found Fort George Brewing Company. At the time, were the only ones offering full-time work. There was a couple other places that were like at Cascade Barrel House that did 1 day of bottling. And there was like, this is great, so can I just work here all the time? And they're like, nope, you can help out when we do packaging. It's like, oh, well, I need to pay rent and stuff. So,
yeah, something stable.
Yeah, found Astoria, beautiful town, love the community. Thought I'd work in brewing for just a little bit as I worked on freelance artwork, and then didn't really want to give either up, artwork or brewing. So now I do get to do both. It's great.
Nice. Heck yeah.
It shows in Neil's merch too, and the can art and everything.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then working at Fort George is where I met Nathan, and then we both wanted to start a project together. And so yeah,
Nice.
took the lead.
Well, to kind of bring it back, So you guys growing up, your siblings, do you guys have siblings? Where do you guys kind of go in that lineup?
Yeah, I got an older brother, and so enduring an older brother really helped me resilience-wise, like weather the industry of craft brewing for sure.
For sure.
I'm sure that's
You got tough
relevant.
skin.
Yeah.
I have an older sister. She's 4 years older than me. She's actually the one that got me into craft beer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I thought like Newcastle was the peak epitome of best good beer, and not to rag on Newcastle, but the world, the well goes a lot deeper.
Yeah,
than Newcastle.
the ocean is much wider.
Yes. So I went to visit her in Portland. She was like, "Do you want to go get a beer? Do you like beer?" I was like, "Yeah, but I like good beer, like Newcastle." And she was like, "Okay, well, let's go to this pub down the street." So we went to Horse Brass.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's
Class,
yeah.
and she was like, "If you like Newcastle, you should order this." And I'm not sure whether it was, I don't remember whether it was Celebrator or Optimator, but it was one of those two Doppelbox.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Holy crap, beer gets so good!" And
Yeah.
and then we went down to Belmont Station, and then
The rest is
then
history.
I went home and started home brewing. And,
There you go.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, it could be tough to make a life as an artist. I
Yeah.
mean, I dropped out of graphic design. This was 2010 to 2012. I did the PCC Tigard campus.
yeah.
They had you could get like an AA in a graphic design, sort of computer arts and science, and there were so many people in it. And it wasn't that I wasn't wanting to do that as a career, but after seeing like 300-400 people like every single term that graduated, then were going into Portland to do work, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be rough. And I don't come from like any brewing background, but my parents are divorced, so I say I have two dads, but they both taught me, it's like, oh yeah, just work your butt off. Like hard work and good quality work can be like learned over repetition and over time, over talent. And so I was like, okay, I'm an okay artist, but some of these people are really talented. But if I just apply hard work, that's something that I can make a life for myself. And that's how I stumbled into craft beer. So I found that interesting that you already had, I think, inspirations from your sister and your dad of like home brewing, of like, oh, this is something that I could do and do really well. I think your story is interesting because you had parents that were teachers in South Dakota. So it's like,
I want to know how you got into remote work for a brewery. What
Oh,
is
sorry.
that?
So I worked for like an ed tech startup in Minneapolis, and then I had a remote work agreement kind of before those were a thing. And then my partner was traveling around as a physical therapist. So like every 3 months we'd pick a new place and live there.
oh,
And,
that's awesome.
And so we wound up in Astoria. Really liked it here, and I was just working remotely. And then these opportunities came up where Fort George was growing really at a rapid clip, and there were some needs, and so I just started helping out any way I could. And anytime the door got a little wider, I'd like stick my foot in it a little further.
Yeah.
So you were working remotely and started working for Fort George.
Yeah.
And I thought you were working for Fort George remotely. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What does that
right.
look like?
Living a double life.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Good clarification.
What do your parents, I mean, not that they care, maybe you don't care, but what do your parents think about, kind of where you went from teaching to now?
Oh yeah. I don't know. They are crazy supportive, or they've always been crazy supportive of me. But I think like it never really seemed like an issue. I think a lot of people kind of move on from education to
Yeah.
really like it's similar to design, where it's like it's really hard to grab a foothold somewhere where you're fulfilled and it's not like you're not at risk of burnout.
Yeah. Very true. I mean, I just know my parents were like, my dad and my mom, they were just, there's no money to be made in craft beer. And my dad's Mormon, so he didn't come see me for work for like 2.5 years. He refused to set foot in the brewery. But I remember my mom being like, beer is cool, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. And but that's literally how my brain operates. I'm like, just become obsessed with something and work at it. And so, yeah, now she's like, okay, like it's all right. You can do this now. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah, my parents are also super supportive. And my dad came up and would stay with me for months at a time and help during the build out, which was awesome. Yeah, we couldn't have done a lot of these projects without him. Yeah, and I forgot you asked like what our parents do before. So my mom was was an audiologist, and then she was a stay-at-home mother for quite a long time, and then went back to work and worked in grant programs for the East LA Community College.
Oh, wow.
And my dad is crazy successful. He was the chief engineer on a physics project, on a Nobel Prize winning physics project.
No way.
Dang.
Yeah, for the LIGO project that was able to measure gravitational waves. So
That's nuts.
yeah, yeah, pretty well, brilliant guy. Both super loving, supportive parents. But I think they were always supportive of me going into the arts, and I went to an art high school before I went to college for arts.
Mhm.
I think they just want me to be stable and happy and secure, and so they're willing to help out
Yeah.
with whatever. There's probably a little part of them that's like, "God, could have been a lawyer or a doctor," but no, they're happy and supportive, and they come up and check out the brewery and stuff. So,
Wonderful. Shows where you get a little bit of your crazy gene too. I mean, scientists are a little bit off the click, but that's awesome.
You have to think outside the box, yeah.
And we'll, so we're at Obelisk Beer Co. We're in the facility right now, and we'll have photos because we don't do video, obviously. But it's gorgeous in here, all the woodwork. And this used to be the old Blitz Weinhard packaging and distro, correct? Or maybe I got that wrong.
Yeah, so it was built in 1950 as a Blitz Weinhard distribution spot.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we kept one spot on the wall unpainted over, and then framed it and covered it up, where they used to write down beer orders, and you can still see where it says like kegs, stubbies, and quarts. And so there's all these like big numbers in groups of like 2 or 3, where people were just like jotting down the work and orders that they had to assemble.
Which is awesome. Just beer
Yeah.
history of living.
Yeah.
Now we just write it on our hands, or we put it in a note in our phone and forget about it.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
We were here the
Or,
other day.
Hey Siri.
Yeah.
We need 8 sixtels and yeah.
We were here the other day, and I swear, like 5, 6, like almost everyone who was like walking past it stopped to look at it. So it's definitely
good.
something that people see a lot, I think. But
Yeah, but it's gorgeous. I mean, the floors, the varnish. It's I don't want to call this like stained wood. I'm not sure if that's right,
Can
but
you tell us about the floor?
yeah, there you go. I'll have you guys talk about it instead of me just jabber on.
Yeah, I feel like so basically we just resurfaced a bunch of different portions of the warehouse, and Dave's dad was instrumental in kind of helping us pull it all together. But the history of the space has sort of continued to unravel over time. It's cool because Astoria is like one of the first settlements, or the first settlement west of the Rockies, and so we continually learn new stuff about the neighborhood we're in, and like people who used to be here. Like this used to be kind of like a Chinatown, and there was like a Chinese grocery store kitty corner across the street here, and like the streetcar used to run in front of our building, but we didn't know that until we
that's awesome.
replaced the water service and saw the streetcar lines out there.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's why we brought in some streetcar rail or some rail from the trolley as our kick rail in front of the bar to kind of like pay homage to that.
That's awesome. Just like unearthing artifacts.
Yeah, and we didn't know this was a distribution warehouse when we first signed the lease too.
Yeah.
That was a great juju.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, bringing beer back into the building. But after it was a Blitz Weinhard beer distributor, I think it operated for, 7 to 10 years that way, something like that. And then it was the Columbia Fruit and Produce for 3 family-owned generations. So it was,
wow.
it was another sort of like wholesale retailer, I guess. So they'd bring in truckloads of fruit and veggies and put it in the walk-in and then assemble orders and drop it off to a whole bunch of restaurants and markets.
Oh, awesome.
And then they had a little store that you could come in for a few years. I don't know how long that operated, but
Yeah, they kind of purchase.
Yeah,
Yeah.
groups of people who used to work here still come in and hang out, and just feels really cool to be a part of that story. And Astoria particularly has such a long story.
Do you have people that come in and tell you stories of them being in here before it was the brewery, like maybe when it was the fruit and produce company?
yeah, I don't remember any particular stories. But as we were doing some of the build-out stuff, there'd like some old guy would kind of wander in and go, "Oh, sorry, I just wanted to look. I used to work here when I was a teenager when it was a distribution."
Oh, that's
I'm like,
wild.
"Oh, wait, dude, do you have any cool stories?" He's like, "I don't know. It was just grueling." Because they'd have to like get here at like 4 or 5 to like unload and
Times were tough.
It's
Yeah, there was a pre-pallet jack era too, where they would run a dolly onto the truck and grab a dolly and then like run off, and there would be a line of people waiting with dollies to grab the next part of the shipment.
Wow.
And, yeah,
That's wild.
No forklift, no pallet jack.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
Straight just human power, super
Yeah.
efficient.
There's the tap room is essentially like the loading dock. So the brewery is down where the trucks would actually back into the building, and then the tap room is what was the loading dock where they offload everything. And there was one part of the floor in particular that we had to replace a bunch of boards, clearly where they would like drop all the dollies and all the kegs and boxes and stuff where it got really beat up.
Yeah, it's all battered.
Yeah, evidence of long-term use.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you guys have done, and even the generations family before, the building looks like in super good bones and super good condition. So I think it's awesome that the way you guys have done it up to preserve that, but also give it new life.
Thanks.
Are there any other parts of the brewery or like things in the brewery that have like come or like were already in the place or that came from something within Astoria that's kind of artifact? Or I'm specifically looking at your cooler over there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the cooler came with the building. That was part of it was in the Columbia Fruit and Produce store, and it was given to them by another market. I think that went out of business and still had an outstanding debt with them. So we did refinish that. We stripped it down to bare metal, repainted it, redid the gaskets, put in new fans in there. It's very pretty.
You had to do
It's
a
a
whole
beautiful-
haul over.
It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
we should have just bought another cooler.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
But it
But
is
it's very
so
pretty.
cool. It's
Yeah.
very unique. I don't think we've seen. I mean, we've been to
No.
a ton of tap rooms,
Not
bottle
at all.
shops. We
So when
haven't
you
seen.
when
Similar
you
to, like,
come in, you
Cerveza.
pay homage to know the hard work that
yeah.
Dave and Nathan and the money they put into that.
And the bar top is made from the old ceiling joists from the original walk-in cooler. So that's all like original old growth duck fir that was salvaged from the building.
And the cooler was here too.
The cooler, yeah, it was already kind of built out in a slab in the corner of the building, but we did bump up the height so we could actually. So we bought some more cooler panels in the door and stuff. But yeah, the original wood door on that cooler is really cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a photo of that. It is epic.
And we will have some video. We're working on it.
Yes,
Some
we will.
pictures and
We'll
video.
showcase. We'll showcase very well. Well, so you already kind of led into when you came to Portland to see your sister about learning more that Newcastle Brown Ale was not the Everest of beer, new beer to get into. But I'm curious, Nathan, what was your intro into it? Was it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was more a cultural thing. Like, I liked beer, but was late to the party. Maybe started getting into beer when I was like 22.
Okay.
So,
At the
I
proper
would-
age.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
effectively like 19 or 20, I think, when I
Yeah.
got into beer.
and in Minneapolis, the craft scene was kind of landing, but it was only a couple of players like Surly. Yeah. So my transition into craft was more just based on like all the young people that worked at Fort George and like just how seductive it was to like get into on the party, and like get to have a job where everyone was so engaged and like there was so much energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Fort George does a good job with the environment they create for not just their employees but the customer as well. Fun, it's vibrant. A lot of their can designs and they do a very popular beer festival called Festival of Dark Arts. That's a big draw, and I think in a town like Astoria, where you have a lot of history of a lot of packaging, the canning, very blue collar ish to start, and now provides like this very vibrant sector, which other places have spawned off of as well.
Fort George is where Austin and y'all met.
Yeah.
And so that's the connection. We were here for a bit of time. And so I think for both of us, I know for us, finding community within the beer industry has been awesome in places that we've been and whatnot. And then being able to spawn friendships off of that. So it's like most of this podcast has started off with people that we've met through our connections at breweries that Austin's worked for. And although I've never worked, well, I did work for one. I did 7 Cs. I was a taproom manager. But I think that is the big key is there's a lot of community. And that's, I mean, beer, like people coming into the tap room here at Obelisk and being able to find community within that. Like I think that's such a big part of the craft beer industry. And the reason why we're talking now is because that's how we met.
Yeah.
So,
I think it does a good job to it brings people together that are like slightly crazy. I mean, the work process involved in making beer is very hard. It's very taxing, long days. It's also very gentle. Cleaning is it's not a joke. You clean all the time because that's how you make the best beer, from brewing to fermentation, from fermentation to packaging. It all has to be immaculate. to then just see somebody either order at the bar or drink it in a can, but just as corny as those commercials when the person like takes a sip and goes, ah, like you get such a weird, good satisfaction about that. And that was something, even washing kegs at Seven Seas, I'd be like, I washed those kegs and you're drinking great beer out of it. I was like, yes. And I'd still be wearing my Carhartts that had like, we had these rubber bottom kegs that were just wood glued back on.
Yeah.
I had that juice would spill on me all day long, so it was the gnarliest smelling juice. So here I am, this stinky keg washer, just smiling at people, being like, yeah, you enjoy that Pilsner. And they're probably like, dude, you need to go home and shower and change, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, so that's a
Yeah,
nice
community.
transition of kind of like where we met. It was, I had heard of Dave Coyne before because Dave did a fantastic job really establishing the barrel program at Fort George. If you've ever been to Festival of the Dark Arts or had any barrel-aged beer, a lot of the base stuff were designed and created either solely by Dave or with Dave and the help of other people, but he really mastered that program. But yeah, our time was always, it was overlapped a little bit. I worked with you for about a year because that was like my length at Fort George, and I think you were there for a little bit and had left, but I was 2020 to 2021. I was at Fort George, but I'd be interested to hear when you guys started at Fort George, and you guys can kind of talk about that little career arc.
Yeah, so I got started actually in graphic design at Fort. I think that's what I started with initially. Transitioned into like some website stuff, hired in additional marketing team members, and became sort of like a marketing manager, and then tacked on sort of like sales team responsibilities. So kind of like my final title, but when I left was a marketing and sales director.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So just like over time, just kind of took on everything I could. Like, it was really fun to be a part of conversations structured around growth and trying to improve the company over time in a holistic way. That's really exciting. But at Obelisk, I think we're really also stoked to make kind of like the smallest possible sustainable brewery so that we can have a tight team that, sort of like knows each other, but is still fulfilled with a living wage and benefits and things like that. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started in 2013. I think it was in March. But I remember my hire date was listed as close enough. Maybe it was like the first week of April, somewhere around there. But my hire date was actually listed as 4/20 because Jack thought that would be funny.
There you go.
I like the idea of moving it based
Yeah.
on the joke.
yeah.
Like I'd already gotten a paycheck at this point, but it was like, what about 4/20? But anyway, yeah. So in around April 20th of 2013, at that time there was maybe 7 people in the brewery, and we were all called brewers, even though like if you worked in packaging, they'd all just refer to everybody as brewers. But
Or laborer, right? Wasn't your industry?
yeah, the Craigslist ad that said
awesome.
brewery laborer.
Yeah.
And it didn't even list what brewery it was for. I had to get so I like
you applied for that.
I
And you
did.
applied.
I know. I'm the dummy that did. So I was just like, whatever. I don't know. It's a foot in the door, and it's something to do while I'm working on illustration. And then I got a response back from Jack Harris at Fort George Brewery, and I was like, okay, well now I have a website to look at or something I can
Yeah.
look
Not
at.
just show up in this parking lot. We'll put you in a van and take you to the place.
Yeah, or just yeah. Yeah, Blank Template Brewing Company. Like, it was like, okay, cool. This is an actual brewery. I can look up and try the beer. But yeah, so started in 2013. First day was just washing and filling kegs. Worked in the canning line. Started learning how to like clean tanks and do cellar stuff. And then it's pretty quick that I actually got trained to brew on the brew house because there was only 2 brewers and they were switching off nights and weekends, like mornings and night shifts, like every day, like or every other day.
That's brutal.
That
It
is
was
brutal.
well, yeah. So then it was like 1 week morning, 1 week nights, 1 week mornings, 1 week nights. And so then I got in there, and then it was like finally you can have a week away from the brew house just doing cellar stuff, working from 8 to 4 every day, and then, but it was still 1 week 4 a.m., next week 4 p.m., next week 8 a.m.
Yeah, you can't adjust to that at all.
It's just
That
super
is
unhealthy. Yeah.
Hectic.
So I think they've gotten a better schedule now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so became a shift brewer. Then I took over the pub system. Then I kind of took over the barrel program, and then it sort of kind of organically happened just because I'd kind of elbowed my way into products I wanted to do. That I just started saying like, well, I'm like the special projects manager our R&D brewer or whatever. Like it just, I was never officially. I was always just barrel manager, but like I would do a lot more than just manage all the barrels. They mostly just sit there. You don't need to do a lot to manage the barrels. Yeah. And yeah, I'm proud of a lot of the stuff that we did there, or that I did there. But there was a lot of other very talented and accomplished brewers that made Dark Arts what it is, for sure. The beers that were at Dark Arts what it is.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that's a good point of like you gave yourself a title. If you don't try to make a title for yourself, it's in the brewery world. Sometimes you're just left as like the same thing, even if you do eight different hats. So give yourself titles. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I washed kegs for like a year and a half straight because that's what I would do, and they were like, "You're the keg washer." I was like, "No, I'm keg lord." Like
there you go.
I wash 120 kegs a day on a very handheld system. It's like I am lord of all these kegs. Now I'll make sure that they are okay for you. It's the little things, the little perks.
Yeah. So I wanted to know, how did y'all decide that y'all wanted to do something on your own? Like, how did Obelisk? Was there a certain day or like an idea, or like how did y'all come about with the name? Tell us.
I think we've had little like fragments of conversations surrounding eventually like Dave wanting to own his own project and have just like a little bit more autonomy and control over outcomes and also just like directions that project would go. And like at Fort George, I feel like we worked really well together on collaborating towards goals in ways that felt like pretty good. And so I feel like that experience sort of led us to believe that we might be able to work together and not fight or destroy each other systematically.
Always a good thing.
And like put something together that might be compelling for people, but also just like rewarding for us. And so, but I don't remember like that. It wasn't like a eureka moment necessarily. It was just like all the little bits of conversations, and then things started to materialize. But
yeah, I had never been shy about wanting to open my own brewery. I think every home brewer, once they have their first successful good batch of homebrew, is like, it'd be really cool to own my own brewery one day. It's like making a good cake at home. You're like, oh man, I should just open a bakery.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, and then I never kind of got deterred. A lot of people get in the industry and realize, fuck that, I don't want to own my own brewery. Yeah, but I was always like, I want the like Nathan said, the autonomy and the kind of control to build like my vision or our vision now of like what the brewery that I want to exist. And so yeah, there wasn't like one moment I think where it hit us, but I do remember you had left Fort George, Nathan, then you said like, hey, I know you've always wanted to open a brewery. Like I think that'd be really fun if you want to do that. And I was like, oh yeah, because Nathan has a lot of skills that I could never attain, and so he's been really great to work with and trying to organize and actually make the whole thing materialize.
Nice. You guys seem like you work and flow together really well. I've definitely had my fair share of working with owners where it's like, I don't know how you two met or how you guys are making this project work together, but it's like they can't even sit and have a shift beer at the end of the day together. And so I think that is a compliment to you guys. Seems so far to be seamlessly working. Maybe that's just from the outside. Maybe there's been things that have happened, and that's okay. But you guys look like a happy couple, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, I think we're pretty reasonable about resolving conflict and pretty good about letting each other know kind of like where we're at. And I think that's probably like one of the most critical components of being successful with a group as a startup. I see the same thing. Tons of brewery owners like over time sort of become fragmented in their viewpoints. And I think it's tough when you have a big staff because you wind up getting cliques that surround like individual owners and then their philosophy. And then there's sort of like a culture war of like team A against team B and stuff like that. I've seen that across a bunch of different breweries.
Very true.
And I think that can even be more difficult. I think a small team actually might help that.
No.
We're just not adversarial too.
Yeah, and it's definitely stressful starting a business, and it'd be weird if there weren't any things to work through. But we're doing good.
Hell yeah.
So you like starting a business? Has that been a fun, painful, painless project?
It's
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we were trying to lift off in 2019, so obviously like
Pre-COVID.
pretty difficult moment to pull the project together, and took us basically forever to figure it all out. So yeah, obviously pretty painful birth, but now it's it's feeling better and better over time, and we're trying to engineer ourselves into sort of like a reality that we're 100% stoked on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say too that I think that sometimes just, it's not trying to sound cheesy, but like the natural course of like how bad do you really want something. I think there's, and we can just, because we're talking about brew industry, that's all I know. I think there's a lot of breweries that like fail during that phase because they run into roadblocks of like equipment not being delivered on time, or the dates get pushed back, which changes and shifts everything else. And sometimes you see people just fracture in a year or two where they're like, I can't deal with this. I don't want to troubleshoot it. And so I think it's also like, I don't know, like a testament and like a
Perseverance.
like a test of pride of being like, yes, we finally made it to this point.
Yeah,
There's something about that.
We talk about this a lot, that like before we started the construction phase and the build out, we would go into other breweries and other spaces and tap rooms and restaurants, and we were very critical and picky about like, I don't know, I don't like this decision that they made, and I would have done this differently, and why isn't there a blank over here? And we're just very very critical. And now when we go into a place, you're like, you are open. This is amazing.
Yeah.
You did so good just existing.
Yeah. Like, how did you even get open?
I'm not critical.
Yeah.
Still a little bit, but like not nearly as much as I used to be.
It's a whole new level of appreciation.
There's
Like,
so much respect for anybody who starts their own business and builds that out.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
for sure.
Yeah, it's not an easy task. I will say we do that too, but
Yeah.
I think the way that we do it, where we're just like, I see what they're doing and I like that. And it's almost like I look at the space and I'm like, if I were to do something with this space, what would I do? So I think it's just natural too, especially people that have those ambitions and dreams of having their spot one day or having something of their own that is,
Oh yeah, it's like imagining your dream wedding. You just want to like, what would I do one day? And yes, but like now I just have a whole new respect for anybody who's gone through the process of starting their own business. It's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say dream wedding. Are you guys going to do like the horizontal serving tanks up there for the lager beer? I know a couple breweries. I think Notch Brewing and Sacred Profane. I think they have some of those.
I don't.
Sorry, yeah. See, this is fantasizing.
Don't skimp. Yeah. Don't skimp on the tank pub concept.
On the one barrel horizontal lager tanks.
We do right now. We're doing everything in cylindro-conical uni tanks, and I would love some lager tanks. And there's the glycol was built in mind to kind of expand the cellar, blow out one of the walls if we can, and then put some lager tanks. But that's
Down the line.
But yeah, I don't think we're gonna have the. We do want to get some side pull like Luger faucets for the lagers.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Because yeah, we got a few lagers on.
Yeah, and this is also a great transition into like what we're drinking right now.
Oh yeah, we started with the German Pils, and this is the German Pils called Mausoleum, and this is the Chit Chat, which is a hoppy table saison.
This is so lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy with this beer. So fermented it to try to like reduce the amount of like peppery banana bubblegum esters that are often pretty divisive in Belgian yeast. I mean, I enjoy them, but tried to just kind of dial that back a little bit. And then it's like a pretty aggressively hopped with Saaz and Waiti from New Zealand.
I like the Waiti. I wouldn't suspect that's something you did. I do like it's the perfect balance of to me. It's like just like super light peppercorn, and you taste a little bit of like that kind of like I'd say I always call it like Rice Krispies, but like that grainy aspect. And then the it's like light lemon aroma to it is super awesome. I'm a big fan of hoppy saisons, but also like table beers, and I feel like a lot of table beers too. So I think a table saison and everything is just more and more of it in the world, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's super inspiring as a category. Like beers that are really low in alcohol but really high in complexity, and we're kind of like constantly talking about different versions of that sort of thing that we could put together, like different ways that we could engineer high complexity, low ABV beers, because they're just like super fun to drink and hang out and like session over a long period of time.
And they do so well with, I mean, beer and food tie in so intimately, and I think these types of beers go so well with the different varieties of food. And that's when you see a lot of beer pairings and beer dinners, this is stuff you typically see. So
How do y'all go about deciding, since y'all have the freedom, how do y'all decide what y'all want to brew or what's going to be on tap, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, I think we're trying to figure that
it's a
out.
good question.
It's different all the time. Recently, we went on a trip to a beer festival together, and like we realized that wouldn't life be easier if we thought of some ideas in advance instead of under the gun. So we have like more luxury in creativity. You know, like so when you work in a context where you feel relaxed, you can be way more creative. And under the gun, it's a lot harder to like come in clutch with the great idea. And so we've started to like kind of like build a backlog of ideas that we want to execute in the future. That's cool. But I mean, I think like we made a spreadsheet of like beers we wanted to brew when we opened. That must have been like 3 years old when we first opened.
Wow.
We'd had
Like,
some overlap
yeah.
of what we initially were like, what's a good opening tap list? Like what do we want to walk into a tap room and see? And so, yes, now there's the, you know, like we were talking about, the total autonomy to brew whatever the hell we want. However, we don't have the resources of a bigger brewery now. So at Fort George, I could brew, 8 barrels of whatever, and they have the resources and distribution network to make pretty much anything just evaporate in the market. And that's great. So there was a lot of freedom there. And now we have only 16 taps instead of before there was 3 different restaurants and tap rooms at Fort George with like 24 taps. So we do have to be a little more mindful of like, oh shoot, we want to brew another Pilsner, but we're probably still going to have the last Pilsner on. And so like we don't want to double up on too many, like we don't want to have 2 brown ales on at the same time. There's something that somebody isn't going to really drive with in the beer consumers. So do need to be a little mindful of
Strategic.
Yeah.
But we're pretty lucky with our demographic here on premise. They drink like way differently than at the grocery store, and that's been consistently really fun and surprising. Like we're not all IPA and lager, and people are okay with that. They'll kind of dig into like more esoteric styles or styles that aren't historically really high sellers, and that makes it allows us to have more creative freedom than we thought we would be able to have.
Yeah, the beer engine's been doing really well for us, which is great. So we can have some some low ABV like traditional real ale on tap.
Oh,
and that's
so
great.
nice.
So we're pretty into like natural carbonation. So trying to like spund all the lagers, keg condition when we can, or when it's right for the beer.
Yeah, I think we talked about this with Dwayne, who we'll have on the podcast.
Next.
He runs a bottle shop, but just like the Astoria community does a good job of like being and backing the businesses that are within it. And I think to me, that's something really special. Growing up kind of Purdy in a small town, we didn't have beer there whatsoever, but people always went to like the local boys' fruit stand because they supported half the people like on the Olympic Peninsula getting fruit from their harvest. And I think that's something really special to have here in Astoria too, because Obelisk Beer Co is here, but then you also have Fort George, you have Brewing Company, which has been here for a long time, and now you have Breakside. And I know there's a smattering of other smaller institutions, but I think like the Astoria community is like super supportive of all, which is like so great, because this is kind of how local bars, tap rooms, and even breweries got started and were able to maintain, was these neighborhood sort of markets and communities that's like, we're gonna put back and give back into you. And so
I think it's been great to just like, it's close enough where you can like walk to it from the downtown area. Like it's just like a good spot. I think I don't know, I just see it as y'all found a really amazing spot within Astoria. I mean, we lived here for about a year, and so being able to kind of know where it's at and be able to walk towards this whenever we're throughout our day. I mean, anytime we go into town when we visited and people are like, where are you going next? We're like, we'll probably hit here, here, and here. And then be like, oh, it's so sweet that you can like walk to all those places too. And like a bunch of stuff. So that's
like pub crawls and stuff is actually really good, fun,
really
and
good
easy to do.
here.
And Astoria. Sometimes in Portland, someone's like, "Oh, we're going to go to this place." Oh yeah, it's only like 5 blocks, and then it's like, "Oh no, it's 50 blocks,"
Yeah.
and then it's like, "Okay, better start the march."
Yeah, for sure. So I had a follow-up question. How did y'all come up with the name Obelisk? What does it mean? How did y'all land on it?
Yeah. So the like short tagline is like we built our monument to beer. It's also sort of like a big reference to the column. So there's like a little sense of place in Astoria. But yeah, it's also just like linguistically rich and fun to say. And yeah, there's like, I don't know, good synchronicity between like, you know, when beer was invented, like way back in like Tunisia, Mesopotamia area. So I don't know. There's so also finding a new name for brewery is damn near
Difficult.
impossible.
Yep, I bet.
Yeah, so many people have them just like stored away. I feel like it was like what site names and domains used to be in the .com area. Somebody would just have it, just
Still,
waiting
yeah.
until somebody needed it. It's like now you can just purchase it from me. I'm not doing anything with it though.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I think it's a great. I mean, I'd never heard of it before. I think it's very unique and very stands out. Just like I think y'all's beer and y'all's artwork and the can art and merch and everything, like definitely stands out. We've been, through Portland and we'll see different things that pop up. That's Obelisk, or we're in different bottle shops and y'all's can art stands out and we can recognize it pretty easily. So
Awesome.
Yeah, the values, marketing, design all tie together.
Yeah.
And that was something working at Belmont Station was, people make decisions of what they want to purchase in like 2 to 5 seconds. So if you don't have something that really stands out, you forever just, and that's not just, I should say, Belmont Station is maybe such a outlier because of how many options they have, but even grocery stores, so having something that translates your message and your company well, but also at the same time stands out enough that somebody who hasn't bought it might stop and look and be like, oh, this might be something I want to try. You guys have executed that very well. So good on you.
Thanks. Yeah, we work together on like the layout and design, and then I do all the illustrations.
Yeah, wonderful.
I'm sure, like, having both of y'all in the design and then marketing, like, y'all have had a lot of time and expertise in that area, so it definitely shows. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I wanted to transition to another question.
Yeah.
Was there something that, like, if you were to go back, I know this is something that you would probably ask Austin, but, like, if you were to go back and tell yourself 2019, y'all were going to start a brewery, y'all wish y'all would have known now?
Oh, yeah. This is a great question. I think it's very smart, and we've had peers that have done this. It's very smart to purchase an existing craft brewery that is going out of business instead of creating your own from scratch. As much as it is really seductive to like execute your vision on a blank canvas, it's so amazing to jump into a space and have all of the energy that you would have spent, just with the build out, to just like hit the ground running and move forward in a
That's
space.
interesting.
Yeah.
I would have never thought that.
and-
That makes a lot of sense.
And I feel like you get freaked out about, like a space closing and, like wondering whether or not the location played into that. But I think like ultimately that's like a really good idea for people who are trying to get into the industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my cue.
Yeah,
Yes,
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we wanted to stay in Astoria, which is hard when there's a limited amount of breweries here, and it's not like we want I guess unfortunately recently Reach Bake had closed, and if we had a crystal ball to tell us that, then maybe we would have just said like, oh well, let's wait and then put an offer on that. But it's not like if Fort George went under, we'd want to buy their system. That's like it's much bigger than so, and not that they're going under, but so it's hard in the small community to just buy an existing brewery. We would have had to relocate, which is an option, but we love it here. But yeah, especially if you're in a bigger city, I would just wait.
I think that's super valuable. There's, that's something I would never thought of. The allure for me of being like, oh, when I have my own spot, I want to get like all fresh equipment. It's
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, I'm like, yeah, it starts with like quality first. So it's like I want to have fresh equipment, but I can totally see now why it's like all the energy that you have to hit the ground running is spent, plumbing in glycol and troubleshooting with like construction, and it's
Yeah.
almost like you get stagnated over a little bit.
Yeah, we were completely shredded when we opened, and just bringing in like our original employees basically just was like a lifesaver. Yeah, Kathleen, our taproom lead, like basically kind of saved our life. And then, now we're
Yeah.
slowly coming back.
Being able to step away from working behind the bar. All of our servers are pretty
Yeah.
awesome, and it's been nice to not have to be behind serving. As we're still trying to finish a lot of the build out. But yeah, I mean, it's not even just the brew house or the tap room or the draft system. It's like the plumbing and the electrical and there's so many tiny little every little compliant code compliant thing that it's like trying to build a car from scratch versus just buying a used one.
Restoring it or something.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because y'all did a lot of time that y'all weren't able to brew, so y'all did a lot of collabs, which honestly I think was amazing too.
I think I counted 31. Yeah,
It was
31?
more- It was more than it felt like at the time. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
No, and I think that was really key. It's something that, I mean, obviously I've known Dave, and we were traveling at this time. We were bouncing all around the U.S., but I think you would share with me. It's like, yeah, dude, I've got all these collabs lined up. Super smart, because you didn't get the brew house for Obelisk Beer Co. wasn't up and running until maybe 3 months ago, or
Yeah, I guess for the context of this conversation and whoever's listening, the tap room opened in November of 2022.
Mhm.
We got the brew house finally operating in early December 2023. So we went a full year without being able to brew on site. So we were making beer at our friend's brewery at Living House in Portland. And so we'd have a couple of our own brands produced out of Living House, and then all collabs in the tap room. So.
And it's super well received, though. I mean, people were stoked, and that was always, I know for New School Beer, Ezra did a great write up on y'all, but that was like same with, I think now how brew hosts, how they're getting their flowers, where I know he contract brewed and did a lot of stuff with Living House, but once they opened, it was just like people were so excited, and that was the same that Obelisk Beer Co. had. People were just so stoked to see everything that was coming out from y'all. So congrats on that. I'm just giving you your flowers now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to know, as opening a tap room, how did y'all pivot from being okay, we're not gonna have our own beer, reaching out into the community to find out what y'all could do instead? Because I know y'all wanted to open and brew. What did that process look like for y'all?
Yeah, our initial instinct was to get the brewery up and running and then pause the tap room, because to us it felt like that's sort of like the heart and soul of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a very understandable sort of standpoint and philosophy for starting up. But when you sort of look at the math of floating the space, it was smarter for us to contract brew and open the tap room and then limp the brewery on second. And I know there's different breweries that have sort of different strategies with opening when there's constraints and you kind of have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seemed to work out for us, and we were really lucky with having so many friends in the industry. Sort of enabled us to make that decision.
Yeah, this community is good about always letting hand and helping out. I think it's probably one of the best working communities you can be in, is the craft beer industry, is that people are like, oh yeah, no, you can borrow tank space or kegs, or no, we can showcase you. I think that's a big value that I think the majority still hold. There's always going to be, sometimes there's going to be pushback,
And we don't own a brewery, but we love the community and we see it. So it's it's very evident to even people who don't own their own space and whatnot. And it's so encouraging. And I think that's why we love it so much, is we know y'all as business owners have connections with other breweries and are able to help support each other. I think that's why it's so enticing as a culture and as an industry. I mean, what other industry does that? So
it's very collegial and very supportive. It's awesome.
Well, usually the last little bit, we've been going for about 50 minutes. But the last little bit I give to you guys to just kind of talk about projects or fun things or words of wisdom you want to get out to people in the public.
Any announcements of something coming out soon, or?
I think I'm really excited to be bringing on site and to be able to sort of just stretch our legs and have fun. And I think that being a small tap room kind of allows us to continue that innovation. I know that larger regional breweries are under pressure to sort of support their flagships, and their distributors aren't really letting them experiment. And I think that's bad for craft beer and craft beer innovation. So like I feel thankful that we're in a position to continue to be able to innovate.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a handful of beers that I'm really excited about that we're going to be packaging and brewing soon. Some like pretty traditional stuff, and some newer like hoppier varieties and hop products and like IPAs and West Coast Bills but yeah, more easy drinking little beers, or like sessionable lagers and saisons and British beers. So that'll be really fun. I'm looking forward to getting a lot of the breweries that we collaborated with before in the past year back over to make beers.
Is it like at your place?
Oh yeah.
Finally, we can host.
Yeah,
So the first collab we had was Living House.
Oh, yeah.
We did a dry Irish stout that's tasting great. So.
Yeah, it's like being a kid where your friends don't want to come over because you don't have a Nintendo, and like the snacks in your cupboard are all like healthy and stuff. But like now we like at
we have
Obelisk,
junk food.
we got a junk food.
Yeah.
We got a Nintendo, and like we want
That's
all our friends to
big
come
speaking
hang
You
out
want
with
all
us.
your friends to come
Yeah,
over?
like
Hell yeah.
having
That's such a
having
good
a
way.
working brewery like really allows for like.
I like that. I hope there's some can art that is like reminiscent of that. It's like 4 kids crowded around a TV with like controllers and wires. Yeah.
We should make something. But and diving into more, we started filling some barrels. Like the very first batch that we made was partially
awesome.
fill barrels because it just takes so dang long. So we wanted to get that going. So we have some funky saison and some big spirit barrel aged stuff in the works, and we're also really excited about like hosting more and more events. We talked a little bit about I think we talked about like the community gathering aspect of beer.
Mm-hmm.
Tap rooms, bars, pubs, taverns. They're all just they create such good like conversation and community. You know, I love a good coffee shop, but everybody kind of sits there, doesn't really talk to anybody. Love going to a winery, but it's not really doesn't feel as communal at a vineyard and everything. So we love the community aspect of our tap room. We have a blast hosting parties, and live music and food pop-ups and makers markets.
Yeah, I've
and
been seeing
all
that a
sorts
ton.
of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's been a blast.
Has the turnout been really good for those? I feel like
Yeah.
it would be, especially with the space.
That's amazing. The community is super supportive. It's also been cool to like be able to start to enrich nonprofit organizations by providing them a space to do their own fundraising. It's just a really easy way to support the community, just to bring everyone together behind different initiatives.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing, especially here in Astoria. I'm sure that's huge.
Yeah. So we want to lean into more both regular like weekly events and individual like annual events. So lots more of those to look forward to.
Nice.
Yeah.
I know this is, and it's not your festival, but you guys will definitely be a part of it. The Festival of Dark Arts is coming up, I think, in like a week and a half. Are you guys going to be doing anything fun for that? Sending beer, people coming here? I kind of know, I mean, you can speak more to it because I've actually never been to a Festival of Dark Arts, but it takes up most of downtown Astoria.
The economic impact that Festival of Dark Arts has for the whole community it cannot be understated. It's most businesses like biggest day of the year,
Dang.
biggest weekend of the year. So yeah, we'll be packed here. We didn't want to try to overload those days with too much other programming and events in the tap room, just because there wouldn't be. It's probably going to be pretty packed anyway. But we do have a big imperial stout. Most of the batch went into spirit barrels, but we'll have some of it on tap here and at Dark Arts. It was conditioned on Brazilian Amburana wood and Madagascar vanilla beans.
Oh,
That
lovely.
one's tasting
Sounds
pretty cool.
amazing.
Yeah. I like how
Until
that
you
smells.
have to do the actual like
Oh.
extracting of the vanilla beans. I remember you and Aaron doing that at Fort George for hours, just back there with like kitchen knives.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot. I don't hand process the
Okay, I was
volume
gonna
board.
say
Yeah,
you have a faster
Just
method.
sped it up a little bit. Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, so we got that, and then we for like the month of February, just stout month, we did the dry Irish stout with Living House, so that'll be on tap. We also filled one Westward whiskey barrel with that.
Oh.
So we'll have whiskey barrel aged dry Irish
That's
stout, which
fun.
is going to be great.
Heck yeah, that's so exciting.
So yeah, we got, but yeah, mostly we wanted to have lighter beers available to drink
that
during
makes
Dark Arts.
sense.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's why we
Some
did
options.
Pilsner, table saison. What else do we have over there? I don't know.
Yeah,
There's-
most of
we
your
have like
most of your
5 beers
tap list is
4%.
under like 5%, which is nice. It's a good respite
Yeah.
from drinking, huge stouts all day long.
Yeah. We say we really enjoy the bookends of beers. Not like we make 7 and 8% West Coast and hazy IPA, but I really like a 4% Pilsner and a 14% barrel-aged barley wine. Like, I want to be able to, like, drink a few during the day or, like, have a nightcap.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. Those are, I think, our preference for beers.
Heck yeah.
That's amazing.
And then I have one last question.
Yeah,
This is
go
actually
for it.
something I talked with Pat at Ilk Beer about, who's an awesome individual. But what's the difference between Hoppy Pilsner, West Coast Pilsner, and now was it the Northwest Pilsner, Pacific Northwest Pilsner? This is a fun segment that we can cut. I'm just winding down, but it just popped in my head. Pat saying, he's like, they're not. They're all hoppy pales. They're all. It's like, I don't know why you'd ruin something like a Pilsner, but
Yeah. So is your philosophy that so there's like two schools of thought, right? One school of thought wants to be like follow BJCP guidelines and name the beer after the style that it most closely resembles based on those guidelines, right? And then there's sort of the other school of thought that plays with naming that is like technically accurate but might be like more exploratory, right? And so like some people feel really strongly about this. I don't know. Yeah, I think we want to make sure that every name is like technically accurate. Like we wouldn't want to mislead a consumer. Yeah.
that's a good response.
And that second one, you're basically saying, like, or is the naming just gimmicky marketing?
Well, I think that's what those first people are insinuating. That like you're just picking a weird name because you think it will help sell the beer. But ultimately, maybe one idea is that, you know, like whatever it takes to get a cool, different beer into someone's hands can help expand their horizons. So like do the rules need to be super rigid or not?
So I think there's, the West Coast Pils, New Zealand Pils, is Northwest? I haven't seen Northwest Pils yet, but and then
Makes sense,
and cold IPA and I guess is it, nobody uses
Modern
IPL
Pils?
anymore.
Modern
But,
Pils.
like, but yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap in what those beers, not only how they're actually made, how they actually taste. But I think it depends on the beer and on the intention and how it tastes, whether you can call it something different, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I do find it's like funny that this is what brewers will debate about when they're having a few shift pints with friends. There's like, so is a Hoppy Pilsner and West Coast Pilsner the same or different thing? And this comes from the previous brewery I worked at, Steeplejack. I think we had a tropical Pils, a West Coast Pils, and then we had another version. And to me, it's like, I know that there was different yeast, different hops. I understand that, but I was like, to me, this would like almost be confusing for customers to try to figure out like the basic, like, oh, I'm getting into Pilsners. I want to try some different ones. And it's like, they could be different, but all taste the same to them. And so that's where I'm like, for me, I was like, I think this is just wordplay for marketing sales, but that doesn't mean it's right or wrong. I just think it's, it's just
agreed.
funny.
I think, the flip side of like it might confuse some people who think they only like Czech and German style Pilsners.
Yeah.
And then they get this beer that tastes like an IPA.
Yeah.
But it can inform somebody who's like, the session IPAs are also dead. But if somebody goes, God, I love the flavor of an IPA, but I just don't want the booze, and then they see a 4.5% West Coast Pils, I'm gonna want to order it.
Yeah.
That sounds great. So, I don't know.
I like that. No, I think it's a good educational tool too.
I think that there's more value, like independent of renaming a stuff that already exists. I think there's more value in finding those like midpoints between them. Like for example, there was this modern Pilsner, and it was from Foreland, and it was like a dry hopped Pils, but the dry hop was super like meager, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
not full West Coast, just like a spritzed up Pils, right? And like that to me is like a cool new like direction to head in.
Yeah, interesting.
And so like if you're finding like the edge of what people's expectations are, I think like coming up with a new name is kind of a fun way to identify that point that you landed.
Yeah.
But renaming the same thing, I don't know if there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's because then at some point, like, why even call it a Pilsner? But do you really just want to call it an IPA just because it's super hoppy? I know the modern one you said was good, but like, I don't know. It's at some point it's splitting hairs, and what works for one beer wouldn't for another just because of how it turned out. I don't know.
Yeah, no, this is all conversation.
Yeah.
Just so everybody knows.
There's
this
no
is-
right answer.
Yeah, there's no right answer. We're just having this.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys giving me your time today. This has been super fun.
Yeah.
Thank you
I'm
so
really
much.
stoked
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, thanks for coming
Yeah,
out.
thanks for having
So,
us. It's
yeah,
been awesome.
please, in Astoria, check out Obelisk Beer Co.
Yep.
Please come in,
We'll have all the
see
links
their lovely
to
tap room,
socials.
drink their super light, super tasteful sessional beer, and then you can go walk and see the rest of
Beautiful
Astoria.
Astoria. Yeah. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.